Hey y'all, it's me. I can continue reading from my book, The Secret Lives of the First Ladies. Let's go. Julia Gardner's marriage to President John Tyler began with a bang. Literally. On February 20th, 1844, the two were sailing down the Potomac aboard the United States Navy vessel Princeton, along with plenty of other important watch tinfolk. Getting so many stuffed shirts onto one ship was the handiwork of Dolly Madison, whose presence still dominated the capital's social scene. It was a gala event full of toasts, laughter, bad political jokes, and slaughter. One of the gunboat's cannons accidentally exploded, cutting a handful of party girls to shreds with chunks of hot flying iron. Upon discovering their father was among the slain, Julia fainted, right into the arms of President Tyler. It was the loss of her father that finally convinced the young Julia to accept the widowed chief executive's standing offer of marriage, and the two got hitched the following June. Tyler wasn't the only man chasing Julia's skirts. She had attracted countless suitors, many of them nearly as powerful as the president. It's hardly surprising Julia had spent her entire life preparing for a career in courtry. Courtry. I think that's how you say it. I don't know. Born on her family's private island off the coast of Long Island to David Gardner, a lawyer, and Juliana McLaughlin Gardner, a rich heiress, Julia was schooled in refinement at one of New York City's most prestigious academies for moneyed young ladies. As a teen, she became accustomed to all the stuff that wealth could purchase. The way in which men, including the fashionable grand tour of Europe, where she learned to appreciate the way in which men looked at her. She was even presented to the French court by her parents and gathered up a string of slavering male admirers who were heartbroken at her return to America. A buxom, dark-eyed beauty, the fun-loving Julia combined a natural flirtatiousness with graceful and educated manners, and set out to take advantage of all that her elevated station in life could bring her. Richard, of course, brought her to Washington, where all manner of powerful men awaited her charms. During the early 1840s, Daddy took Julia and her sister on visits to the capital, where he rented out a space large enough to entertain all the fellows who came a calling on the now sensational Gardner girls. Julia turned down proposals from all of them, including a Supreme Court justice. Wow. But adored the attention all the same. In 1842, she met the president. 30 years preceding her, and still mourning the loss of his wife, Letitia. By the following February, Tyler's grief had abated enough for him to start showing a conspicuous interest in the young Long Island siren. After dinner and cards, the nation's leader threw caution and impropriety to the wind, shot Julia with attention while scandalized guests looked on and chased her through the White House like a smitten schoolboy. Julia proved as cool as a cucumber, however, and took particular interest in making the randy old man wait as long as possible for his amorous reward. His marriage proposal, made at a Washington birthday ball, was turned down. Julia answered no 3 times, each time striking him in the face with the tassel that dangled from her festive cap. Tyler ended up proposing yet again and left it an open invitation. And so it went till the poor girl's father was really eviscerated on the deck of the Princeton in 1844. Their wedding that summer was conducted in secret, in part to elevate the alarm of Tyler's children from his previous marriage. At least one of them, Letitia Tyler Semple, who was virtually the same age as Julia, would never forgive Julia for making for taking her mother's place. For her part, Julia, now the First Lady and at 24 the youngest up to that time, drank in the celebratory of her new role with relish. She had reached the big time. She made the most of it. In addition to traveling about town in a four-horse carriage, she totally referred to the White House with her family's money and decked out the manager's staff in garish new livery. Those in Washington preferred Republican austerity were most alarmed, however, by the First Lady's coterie of ladies in waiting. This was simply unheard of and smacked wildly of courtly excess, dubbed the Vestal Virgins by a critical press. Julia's 12 female companions accompanied her everywhere. At White House levees, they lined up on either side. Julia sat crowned upon an elevated dais like some goddess descended from Mount Olympus. Wow, she sounds so full of herself. I wouldn't even want her. It all had to come to an end, of course, and after taking advantage of her influence to get executive appointments for her sloon and for kinfolk, Julia said goodbye to White House glitz in 1845. In typical Julia style, she did so with as much pomp as possible. At her grand finale ball, held on February 18, 1845, 3,000 guests got hammered on a virtual ocean champagne while the outgoing president's spouse danced with ambassadors from nearly every European nation. It was one of the most lavish nights in Washington history. Wow. After retiring to Tyler Sherwood Forest Estate in Virginia, Julia continued to bear children for her seemingly inexhaustible husband. John fathered his last of 15 children when he was 70 years old, for crying out loud. Fuck! What the fucking hell? Crap. Okay. The couple also took up the Southern cause. Tyler, an avowed states' rights man, was openly sympathetic to his native Dixie, and Julia, though born a Yankee, followed suit. And with a vengeance. Though both had wanted the Southern states to avoid succession, they nevertheless threw their lot in with the Confederacy when the Civil War broke out in 1861. Tyler went to serve in the Confederate Congress, where he died in January of 1862. Julia, left a widow at 41 with a brood of children to raise, continued to support the cause of the Confederacy with a passion. Fuck her! Oh my God. Money, however, became the consuming issue of her life. Her late husband's lousy investments hadn't left her much cash in the pot. And as the South's fortune waned, so did Julia's. With Sherwood Forest in decline, she determined to relocate herself and children up north to her mother's home on Staten Island. A journey during wartime that required them to travel to New York via Confederate-friendly Bermuda. Once there, she had to fight for the possession of the Staten Island house of their brother David, a staunch Unionist who no longer had any sympathies for his rebel sister. Those who would eventually win custody of the state after the war, things had definitely gone south for her, pun intended. Her children were mocked and assaulted for their Confederate loyalties, and Julia was forced to send them overseas to be educated. Efforts to either maintain or sell her extensive southern property brought her plenty of grief and precious little profit. In 1872, Mrs. Ex-Presidentress, as Julia is insisted on calling herself, had the gall to move back to the capital, drawn, despite her precarious financial situation, to the city's social scene. There she became a Catholic and fought to get a First Lady's pension for Congress. Despite their better judgment, they eventually gave it to her. The socialite who'd grown up on Long Island, ruled over Washington, played the Southern belle at Sherwood Forest and battled for a home on Staten Island, chose Richmond, Virginia, to live out her final years. True to fortune, until she died there in 1889, of her stroke, Julia dominated cities like a prima donna till the end. How to succeed in advertising. Julia's parents weren't just thinking about their daughter's worldliness when they decided to take her to Europe in 1839. Their primary motivation was getting her the hell out of town. Julia had recently scandalized Long Island by committing what everyone, especially Mr. and Mrs. Gardner, considered a disastrous faux pas. It all started when a New York City dry goods company, Boger and McComley's, I think that's how you say it, approached Julia about doing a little bit of advertising. Flat as a curious 19-year-old agreed. The result was a carefully designed handbill showing the precise likeness of Julia strolling before the company's storefront. All printed at Boger and McComley's, number 86 9th Avenue, proclaimed the copy. Their goods are beautiful and astonishingly cheap. The advertised captured the rose of Long Island. Julia was delighted. Her parents were not. The daughter of a prominent Long Island family being used in what was one of the very first examples of celebrity-driven promotion in the nation's history. Girls of breeding simply did not do this. It was akin to prostitution. Desperate to get Julia away from the city until a storm of embarrassment blew over, the Gardners whisked their now famous little girl off to Europe. Polka dot. Though many Washingtons were disgusted with Julia's aristocratic excesses as First Lady, she still managed to have plenty of admirers. And no wonder. F.W. Thomas, one of the countless men who found Julia irresistible, was a reporter for the New York Herald. Julia took him on as a sort of press agent, and Thomas gleefully complied, ensuring the First Lady a steady stream of fawning journalism. But Thomas wasn't the only friend that Julia had in the publishing industry. Mrs. Tyler was a legendary dancer. She was particularly gifted at waltzes and had single-handedly introduced the polka to Washington society. It went on to become quite the rage. So famous were her skills on dance floors that a New York music publisher printed the Julia Waltzes so that the masses might dance to the First Lady's favorite tunes. Chief concern. It was Julia Gardner Tyler who first got the Marine Band to play Hail to the Chief upon the President's arrival at social function. So she did one good thing. One. Everything else she was bad. Oh my fucking Lord. Confederate widow. When one considers that Julia was New York born and bred, her efforts on behalf of the South seem remarkable, to say the least. She always embraced her husband's political ideas as her own, and states' rights, as well as slavery, was no exception. In 1853, Julia took umbrage with a letter from prominent British ladies to their counterparts in the American South that pleaded for an end to slavery. She penned a response that appeared in numerous newspapers, leaving little doubt as to what its author thought of such a notion. In addition to harping on the usual nonsense about the welfare of blacks under white domination, she denounced Harry Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin and went so far as to claim that slaves lived sumptuously when compared to lower class breds. Her ardor for her adopted region never waned, even during her sojourns to the North. During the Civil War, where she lobbied against President Lee, handed out posters and pamphlets strove to ease the plight of Confederate prisoners of war. It galled her to know that in her absence, Sherwood Forest was turned into a school for African American children. Little wonder that she could suffer attacks after the war by fellow Staten Islanders. A sixth sense? In January 1862, Julia awoke from a dream which her husband, awaiting Richmond at the Confederate Congress, was mortally ill. She promptly traveled to see him, only to discover that he was quite fit. Just days later, however, he fell ill and soon died. It was Julia's only encounter with the unexplainable. She could teach the professor the ability to foresee the future in her dreams and is rumored on one occasion, to have hosted a seance in which the table levitated. Please rate, comment, and subscribe down below. And if you're on YouTube, please ring that bell notification so you can know when I upload. And if you're on TikTok, please like and follow my videos. And please pay for something on either my eBay and or Mercari, okay? And if you want the username to those, just comment down below, okay? Bye!